Good afternoon, George here, Thinking Pets. Today I have two guests, my colleague, my partner in crime, Lee, and then our special guest, Roman. Roman Gottfried, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi everyone.
It's really,
Thanks for
really,
Hi.
having me.
really an honor to have you here. Now, Gottfried, Roman actually. Um, For those who don't know, Roman has worked in rescue and dog behavior for over 25 years and now offers holistic, trauma-informed behavior consultation internationally. His approach blends emotional wellness, somatic healing, and secure attachment work with both dogs and their guardians. Um, Roman, what is that exactly?
It's a good question. I always wonder what I do.
Now you can explain to us.
um, Holistic is all included, which means if we see animal behavior or dog behavior, we're not seeing only just the dog and the body. We see these multi layers of physical body, emotional body, and spiritual body. On that concept, I see that behaviors are multifaceted and complex, and the environmental factors are also important as the emotional factors, as the dog's feeling safe in the family. So we can say that holistic is a trauma informed relational behavior philosophy that takes in consideration then the entire dog and its environment when we look into things that we want to make the dog feel better. We see dogs as sentient beings and not just animals that need to be dominated or controlled. Doesn't mean we are not responsible, but it means that we take in consideration how does my dog feel better, and if my dog feels better, then he behaves better. If he behaves better, I feel better, so everybody's being helped.
That's great, excellent. Yeah, I know Lee has got quite a few very interesting questions to ask, but I'm just wondering about one thing. When I look on social media, guys like you and Zach George and those guys, they get attacked a lot because of putting the word out there about positive reinforcement and the side effects of punishment and that sort of thing. How do you handle all those negative comments? How do you feel about it?
It's very interesting because I was one of them doing exactly the same thing once upon a time. So I'm a crossover trainer and I had the same arguments and the same ideas and the same complaints and the same attacks. Was I a bully? Not really. Maybe I came across like that, but in reality is people who have different opinions is one thing. People who don't see that they do harm is a different thing. So they do behave towards people the same way they behave towards animals, and that just explains what they do. Am I offended by it? It makes me sad that they don't see what I see. So I'm trying to focus on showing what I see without saying it's right or wrong, and see if they can catch up with it.
Excellent. Okay, what made you change? Why? What made you change your mind?
Well, there is this one dog. It was one dog who actually put me in a position where I had to question what I do and how I do it, and that there was a predisposition of me just questioning everything in general. And in my quest to justify the tools and the methods I'm using, and went into the sciences. There must be science out there that confirms that I do what I do right, only to find out that I was wrong, and that dog was just a cherry on the cake. And he's like, "Yeah, what you tried doesn't work. Now come up with something better." And that was basically my shifting. It didn't happen from one day to another. It happened over a period of time. I would say it started with questioning my tools, and then questioning my methods, and then questioning my how effective I am. So it was that this curve that says, "Oh, I know everything. I know nothing," and then try to get uphill again. Um, but yeah, I got a lot of critique of being the one I was back then, but also I got a lot of critique of then shifting. You're going through a grief and you go through shame through that process, and that's something that comes to the question earlier. How do I feel about these people behaving that way? Okay, that's what they think. That's what they do.
Mm,
It doesn't affect me. It affects me, yeah, but not in the way that I would say I get aggressive about it.
yeah. No, that's. Yeah, I think we all started. All the older guys started in the 90s and early 2000s, and we all. Yeah, I myself started with all the outdated stuff, and it was funny when I started to study animal behavior. You actually realize that you know nothing. You must learn everything from scratch. So that's always interesting. Okay, Lee, I know you're really keen to ask your questions. Go for it.
So yeah, I I think I'm going to ask you some questions that you probably don't get asked very much. I I've watched some of your stuff, and I feel like a lot of stuff is very similar. And I always try and come from a perspective of my country, South Africa, which is
Hmm.
steeped in so much trauma and so much difficulty, and I see that affect our dogs on a daily basis. And I mean, we have a lineage of trauma in this country that's probably never been properly addressed, and everyone's always just trying to put a band-aid over it and go like, well, it's all done now and fine, get over it, it was 30 years ago. um, but what we see here is, I think if you work in rescue here, you see an unimaginable amount of cruelty towards animals in the country. And there's a lot of anger and there's a lot of violence against animals. And what I always try and teach my students is that that generational trauma exists both in the animals and the people who are their guardians. And I know you deal a lot with trauma based work. I'd love your perspective on that.
Thank you for sharing that. And yes, I get a little bit emotional because as a complex trauma survivor myself, I noticed and I had to look into why I was behaving that way, not seeing certain things that I did the way I see it now. And I noticed that there was a filter, a perception of how I was parented into how I was reacting to dogs. Because I recreated that pattern of parenting towards the animals because that's what you do, right? And what is being done to you, that must be right. And you must be a bad boy. That's why you got punished. And that's why the dog is a bad boy or a bad girl and needs to be punished because that's what we do when we face these conflicts. And that was a kind of a part that I had to look into deeper into the why of the what. And then looking even further deeper, why did I end up thinking like that? Um, and I feel looking into generational trauma and as energy healer that I'm working also with animals and little with people in that concept, I noticed that there is a breach of trauma coming generational, several generations. So we have this generational trauma between individual people, and then we have a cultural generational trauma, and especially, and I'm definitely not qualified to kind of look into that more in details, but I do see that America, Germans, South Africans, and pretty much most of the countries have that ancestral cultural trauma that they have to work through, and it does affect animals too. So if I see a person that is not like me as less, then why would I see an animal that's not like me more, right? And so this are some concepts that I believe, I don't know, I just believe that is the problem here, and recognizing that we are not less or we are not more, and just a color doesn't make a difference and a species doesn't make a difference. We have to behave towards our environment in the best and highest good we know and we are aware of. And because we are sentient beings and we are dealing with other sentient beings, we have these obligations, or we should have these obligations to treat them as such. But that also comes in with education. If education is not being accessible to people who are being seen as less, then how would they be able to see more? It's limited. Back in time, we had family structures, we have little communities, and there was judgment, and there was ethics, and there was control and education all in one piece. And I'm not saying that different cultures have right ethics or wrong ethics. Some people eat meat, the other people don't. Some people see cows that way, the other people see cows different way. So that is relative. However, we always try to do better. The more we know, the better we do. And if that access to that knowledge to how do I do better is not accessible, then unfortunately we go in the wrong direction. And that's what happens also in the dog industry. Now, there are other issues that happening here that are not just generational, but are, let's call it, gender trauma. So we have a toxic masculinity and we have a toxic femininity, and it's nothing to do with male and female. We see that these are traumas coming in all the way back from our religion and even further back, and we react towards the animals as such. So, for example, some men or women behave toxic masculine and they want control, and suppression and super control. That affects the environment, and that's also a healing process that has to happen, not only in personal healing, but also not generation healing, but also in a gender healing. And
Oh.
I don't want to go further away in that direction, but this it's quite complex, and we have to see it from a multi perspective rather than seeing, oh, a person is mean to an animal. We have to see, how did this person feel comfortable doing that, and what made him feel that's okay, and what made him feel that he feels victimized by the animal to use such a violence towards the animals as a response. So we can see at some point that people who are violent towards animals have been victims of violence themselves. And I'm not a psychologist, just from personal observations. But I think your subject is psychology as well. So I think you have a better answer on that than I have.
We once, I was once working with NSPCA, and we looked at the files of people who had committed animal abuse, and then we had social services there, and they were talking about the people who had committed child abuse, and there was correlations between the two, for sure. There's correlation between human abuse and animal abuse,
Correct.
100%. Um,
One so
yeah.
one thing that I do in my mentoring program is, before we sit down and talk, I need to know that person. What is the person being through? Because it's an important piece. It's gonna come up. If I feel threatened by a dog and seeing that to a filters of being a victim, then I need to recognize, is it my behavior that triggers the dog, or is the dog triggering my behavior? So we have to be very aware of our own trauma and our emotional function when we are working with animals, especially in complex family situations where sometimes the dog's behavior is related to the family's behavior. And so we have to see a bigger picture. Who do we address first? What are we talking first? Are we listening to the kids? Are we listening to the parents? Or are we just listening to the dog?
Sure, I agree with you so much. I mean, really, you speaking my language, and I agree with you. And this is conversations I try to have so much with people who just going to blame. It's the person. And I love people to try and see the bigger picture. I think what's hard though is when you're sitting with someone who isn't at a level of self-awareness where they can start to process and they can start to work through things that are influencing the relationships with everyone in their lives. It's very hard as a behaviorist or trainer to go, well, this is what you need to do with your dog. They look at you and go, well, no, um, I'm not going to. I really don't care. The dog must just obey me.
Great point. Um, I come from a perspective that I will attract people that are in alignment with my belief system, and I will attract people who are ready to make a shift. As a behavior facilitator, let's call it this way, my goal is to understand what the person is struggling with, his point of view, and ground that. Usually I take people's personal experience, like their job description or their profession, and bring that to the perspective. For example, I work with a Texas Juvenile Justice Department, that oversees about 6,000, I think 6,000 juveniles in US and in Texas. And so we had a conversation with the practitioners there who help children, and most of them have gone through a program called trauma informed behavior, relational behavior intervention, TBRI, but they couldn't ground the idea that the child they're working with acts out of animal thoughts. So when I had a traumatized dog working with us in this setting, they had empathy with that dog. They couldn't show the same empathy to the child. So there was a biased thinking behind that, because the child who did something to the parents, usually this is traumatic experiences, then they should get punished. This is still mindset in place until we point them out. Well, what do you see the difference between that, and what do you see the difference of this? Why do you see justice here and you don't see justice there? And I had good experiences from people kind of like, oh, I couldn't connect the dots, right? Because of their own experience. So we have filters that we cannot see until somebody points them out. So our goal, if we want to help and shift family systems, we don't see that the problem is the dog. We want to see that everybody has a problem with each other. It's a family problem. And we cannot just address one point. We have to listen to both the humans and the dogs and see how they see how it comes from their perspective. And once we understand how they see it, then we can show them a different perspective and a different point of view. How would it feel to you if you would see it this way? And how would it feel to you if actually thinking down that route? Now, with humans, we can tell them think like that, but dogs, you have to show them what it is, right? So, yeah, if I have a dog who is aggressive towards other dogs and I recognize it's a somatic response, then I have to deal with the body. The body cannot listen to me, but the body can respond to the environment. So, I'm going to bring in a fake dog and prove that dog what you thought it is real. Maybe it's not. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. How about we check it out? And how about we are confirming that that looked like an animal was actually not an animal and it's not a threat. And the next time the body will see that figure, that shape of a dog, he will question himself, is this the same thing I felt before? Is it something new? And we can slowly transition. So while with humans it goes faster, or sometimes there is a resistance, with animals it's a little bit smoother because they are more honest about their feelings, right? And I see animal behavior is not really behavior. We have to go beyond behaviorism. We have to see what's happening internally, not just externally. So we see a dog behaving while we're calling ourselves behaviorists. We shouldn't call ourselves behaviorists. We should be called facilitators, because we're facilitating a change, not trying to push a behavior from point A to point B.
I love
I
that.
hope that answered the question.
I love that seeing yourself as a facilitator in the process, as opposed to this external body of knowledge that is going to tell you how to fix things, because it never works like that.
No.
And I often found a lot of dog owners actually know their dogs better than I do. And if I just listen to them, the solutions are very much rooted in their conversations already. They just haven't been able to articulate it.
Right, right. Yeah, I noticed that the other day I worked with a family, and there were two children who were with disabilities. The one was legally blind, and the other one was had emotional challenges. But I thought, even people who have disabilities are intuitive. Why not listen to them? So the blind person told me how the dog feels in different stages. So I can say right now, if you pick up on the dog, what do you feel right now? He's confused. Okay, that's a good information. Even if I don't like it or I like it, it's an information I have to take in consideration. And then I ask the parents, how do you feel about your daughter's answer? And she's like, she's always right. Good. So next time you guys are worried what's happening with the dog, why don't you ask your expert? He's right there telling you exactly what's happening. And then having those family members working together as a team makes the big difference. So I totally agree with you on that.
You just you gave me you gave me the feels now, because I've got two autistic children. So I work a lot. I'm working a lot with them and the autism spectrum disorders. And I see such a correlation in their relationships with dogs, relationships with people, and it's just beautiful to watch. And I'm so grateful that I worked with dogs before I had these children, because you know I can work with them, I think, better than a lot of people can work with autistic children. So
My favorite clients are people who come from special education or people who work with mental problems, and it's kind of like we get it done pretty quickly.
exactly.
We just have to create that module. I'm an engineer from background, so a module is a number that makes two gears working together. So made different gears with different teeth can work together if they have the same module. So that's kind of the factor that we need for having the children and parents and dogs kind of work together. We have to create that factor.
Yeah, 100%. You touched on toxic masculinity a little bit, and I'd like to just delve into that a little bit more, because so I've worked a lot with dog fighting and dog fighting rings, and there's very much a sense of toxic masculinity in that world. So the number one most popular dog in South Africa at the moment is a pit bull terrier, 100%, and it's all very much about posturing and about this dog is, aggressive and I'm aggressive, and it's that whole thing that goes hand in hand. So this is a two-part question. Number one, how do we work with that? How do we work with toxic masculinity? How do we work with that dynamic where you know nothing because you're a woman, and you know nothing because you're coming from this point of view? And then number two, dogs that come from fighting backgrounds and rehabbing them, what is the likelihood of rehab? I mean, so just to give you perspective, here we have a huge overpopulation of dogs. So we euthanize a lot of the dogs that come from fighting rings just because there's too many dogs in the country. That's the bottom line. We don't have the resources to rehab them. And I think we get a lot of flack for euthanizing these dogs. So I just wanted you to talk a little bit more around that toxic masculinity, and then the odds of fighting dogs being rehabbed.
Let me preface that I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not the one to analyze toxic masculinity. If somebody Googles it, they're gonna see different stages of this um, perception. I see the toxic masculinity also from an energetic perspective, and I see it's trauma based, and it's a healing process. It's not something we can shift. It's not going to happen in our generation, maybe our two or three. It's a process. We're fighting since Adam and Eve. If we're going back into religion, right? Um, we see the different cultures were female oriented and then they're male oriented, but it's not the male and the female. It was the masculinity and femininity that went up and down. We are in that crisis we are right now. It's basically about the masculine aspect resisting the shift and merging and be holistic, be a whole, seeing my part and the other part as one. So from my understanding, toxic masculinity basically resists to accept the feminine aspect of themselves. They cannot love themselves because that's not functional, and so that's being pushed away. Why it's happening from each individual person must be different, but it happens also to females who don't love themselves and they think that control is the best way to push it away. When we see fighting rings, I feel this is, I don't know how if I can say that, but I feel it's a disorder. Somebody who sees violence and blood and pain as okay is really disturbed. I I had the opportunity to work with dogs who have been in fighting rings, and not the theoretical, oh, this dog has been in fighting rings because he has some wounds. Actually, I know from a court description that these dogs were cases of court orders and lawsuits, and I had to deal with them in the process of helping them transition. And while I agree that we cannot save all the dogs, we have the opportunity to give dignity to all the dogs. And when we're looking at those animals who have seen that violence, they didn't do it because they liked it. They did it because of their relationship with the person who reinforced it. There are no animals that are healthy in their mind to search for violence unless they are threatened. So for these dogs to do these things, they are violated, they're abused to get to that point. Even if it's not physical abuse from the handler, it's an emotional abuse because the dog is forced to do things because of their relationship, right? It's nothing different. And I understand it's giving a trigger alert here. It's nothing different if a parent exposes their child to sexual trafficking. It's the same thing, just a different species, right? And so when we sit from that perspective, we have nothing to negotiate, we have nothing to explain. It's just plain not unethical, it's antisocial. These people should not be in social settings and definitely not having animals. Now, the next thing I want to see into how do we rehab those dogs. Once we understand the dynamics of that trauma that has happened in that family setting between the dog who's being used for fighting and the person who's using the dog for fighting, we have to see both motivations. And I do truly believe that these people may eventually really love that dog. They have passion with that dog. They feel like they're part of themselves and they're fighting their demons. So I wouldn't say that these people are bad to the dog. Some of them really truly love their dog in their own way. So seeing from that perspective, we can see that a dog, the problem and the trauma sits in the attachment and how they express their love to each other. So we have to reframe that to the dog. And how do you feel safe? And how do you feel hurt? And how what things do you have to do to fit in that relationship? And so some people think that the only way to control this kind of dogs is through control. I would say exactly the opposite. In order to bring that dog back to a present moment, you have to give them more control rather than taking away control. And this is actually the same thing that a crisis management does if somebody has hostages. We want the person who has the hostages to feel in control, otherwise, he's going to lose control. And from that perspective, then I take to the next level and says, now that you see that you can do things and nothing is wrong, whatever you do is right, and whatever you do feels good, we trigger, I think, a genetic factor when it comes with a dog early experience as being born in a safe place, in a safe environment with care, right? But usually those dogs who are end up in those levels of aggression and violence are not part of that healthy environment when they are born. So we're having a pregenetic trauma coming down the line, and we have a, let's call it a genetic predisposition for that dog to easily shift to violence because that's a default. Can we help those dogs? Yes, if we can afford it, because it takes time, it takes work, it takes environmental management a lot, and sometimes we will not be able to shift that dog. But again, we're going back to the stage. It's not the dog's fault, and they're sentient beings. And if we're going in the spiritual level, these animals come here for us to bring a lesson. What is the lesson we get, and what do we do after that lesson is being given? Right? Do we euthanize those dogs just like that because they're just bad, or we are ethical and we are humane and have them transition in a healthy way? With which I mean, sometimes you cannot avoid euthanasia because these dogs are just beyond being safe to even themselves. How do you set it up? Are you just put him in a gas chamber? No. It still has to become ethical so we're not leaving behind a generational trauma because our behavior towards the dog and the way we act becomes an energetic blueprint, and that goes up. What comes down will go up too. So, in that perspective, as a behavior consultant, making sometimes choices that are not in my best interest, I have to think ethical and I have to think what's in the best and highest good for all involved, especially the dog who is the victim here. And yeah,
Mm.
I've been, if I remember, 3 or 4 times with clients in euthanasia process, I was part of it, sharing that experience and be part of the dog. You're still safe, even if what you feel right now doesn't make any sense, because we're
And
not killing the dog. The dog just doesn't make any sense, and then he falls asleep. Yes, there is a somatic experience there, which what we try to avoid as much as possible, and that's why we have so many processes in place for that to be an easy transition. And so for those people who listen to it, I would never want to be in their place, have to make that decision. And I'm the last one who has to make that decision. It's not on me. It's usually a veterinary behaviorist who is experience and educational higher than me, and eventually the vet combination with the owner. But I will be part of it as part of the facilitator.
I always think of my clients who euthanize for behavior as the unsung heroes, because to make that decision, I think, must be the hardest decision you could ever make. And I always look at them with so much admiration that they're able to do that, and they're able to
Mhm.
think like that. I have so much respect for my clients who make that decision. I really do.
I want to speak ahead a little bit, um, for those who says our colleagues on the other side, colleagues question mark. If you would use a shock collar, you use the prong, you would have saved that dog. Sounds reasonable, and I would agree from their perspective, seeing that as a solution, using violence and pain and fear to suppress pain and fear, so they get the trophies and the dog has the suffering. That's sick to think that direction. In that concept, me as a trauma child with trauma, being molested and I've been abused emotionally and physical, sexual abuse, physical abuse, I should get punished for feeling that way and resisting and complaining about it? Should I be euthanized? Sometimes I thought it would be a good choice and I tried it, it didn't work. But at the same time, we have to think down the road. Sometimes the damage is there. We cannot look away from it. And
100%.
it's an ethical consideration, and sometimes we have to be intuitive about it. We cannot just make decision based on numbers.
Absolutely. I think, sure. But if you, for me, a dog living his life on a prong or a shock, or even just locked away for his entire life because he cannot be around people, for me, that's a worse punishment than euthanasia.
Right.
Honestly, that for me is the worst way you can possibly live. Constant punishment inflicted on you or isolation are your choices. Yeah, I think that the kinder solution is definitely euthanasia.
And I don't know if the question will come up later, just being a little bit ahead. For people who think those tools don't cause pain, it wasn't a physical pain, somebody being abusive to me. It was an emotional pain. You don't see any marks, but it's there. Being touched didn't cause any bruises, but it caused emotional bruises. If I go to church and I was a choir singer in a choir as a child, I didn't like to sing anymore. That stopped. My connection to God in that point was destroyed because I didn't feel safe in that environment. Was it a physical abuse? No, it didn't harm me, but it did harm me. So while we don't see the trauma those tools cause because we don't feel them separately, like I put it on my skin and it didn't hurt me, you did it to yourself, making that choice, but not having choice puts you in a state of helplessness and not being in control of your environment. That's so stressful, you rather die from it. And
Absolutely.
just people don't have that ability to think down the road because they lack on empathy, and lack of empathy is dissociation, which means I feel sorry for those people who have been through that trauma to feel dissociated from the environment.
Mhm. And I feel like the harder you fight your corner to say I'm right and my method's right, the more kind of lack of, I don't want to say lack of empathy, because but the more kind of there's a cognitive dissonance between you and what's, you're not dealing with your pain, you're not
Right.
dealing with what's going, the harder you fight. So I just I don't go on social media if I can help it because I hate it so much. So all you people that spend your time there, I'm way too sensitive and I get like really upset. So I try to avoid it. But when I have watched those fights happening and people fighting their corners, I always go, I feel for you. I feel so much for you because you can't see your own pain that's standing in your way. You can't see that defending your position so solidly and not having the flexibility to think bigger is such an obstacle in your life.
I was thinking about the other day and confirming what you're saying. For a person who chooses violence or chooses abuse without them seeing it, they have to take in consideration that if for them to accept it, they have to accept that they have not been loved and it was harm done to them by the
Sure.
people supposed to love them. And that's therapy in itself. So for somebody to wake up in the morning, I was like, I'm going to teach those tools because now I changed my mind. Wow. Just thinking about it is a big step.
Mm.
It took me 5 years to go through that process, and I'm still going through process because sometimes I'm like, I wish I could do it, but no, I shouldn't do it. Right. So it's always a battle with themselves. So I don't blame anyone to have that opinion. What I do have a problem with is people who are educated, read about it, know about it, choose it,
Mm.
their choice to do it, even though they have alternatives, right? I'm not talking about the Joe and Jim and Mary and Karen out there who makes things or choices because somebody told them to do it. I'm talking about people who have their learning ability and had the tools and the material to research it and they didn't do it. There's their obligation. So I'm not here to educate anyone. It's their obligation to learn, right? And this is where sometimes things go wrong. To George's earlier questions, how do I feel about um, social media being attacked? Okay, I don't have to teach them a lesson. They have to learn it. It's their obligation. It's not mine to teach them. I did my work already. I'm there. No, I don't feel like Jesus. But sometimes I feel like I understand what he's going through.
Oh, I love that. It's not my job to educate them. There's enough information out there.
Right,
You know,
right.
it really is. I love that.
I do have free content. I do have online classes, online course. If somebody is smart enough and copy paste everything I have on my website, he can graduate. I don't remember what I wrote kind of 5 years ago, but looking back sometimes I'm like, oh, did I write that? Oh, okay. And sometimes I just delete things because like, no, that's not what I am right now. That's old. Delete. Delete. I delete a lot of stuff.
Sure.
Oh,
So it's a
experience.
learning process.
Mm. The big thing I'm hearing throughout everything you're saying is this feeling of feeling safe and how that's such an important underlie for everyone. And we used to have a saying when I worked with youth at risk that went containment before care. You can't administer any kind of therapeutic process if you do not feel safe. That's the bedrock of everything that you have to do.
Yeah.
And that would apply to dogs as well and cats.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with you. I've seen that also with children and learning as a person who has ADD and dyslexic. The more stress I get, the less I can remember.
Mm.
So I can literally walk away from my car, reading the license plate, getting stressed, going to the counter and put my license plate in. I have to take a picture so I can look at my phone to type the number of my license plate that I have for 5 years on my car. My wife still complains about that. I don't remember her phone number. Okay. So imagine as a dog now who is in a strange environment, has no clue what's happening to them, getting stressed. The brain basically shuts down because it's not necessary to think about things. All you have to do is run. So the muscles have to do the job, not the brain. And then we want to put things in there. But I have to agree for all those people who use aversions and punishment that, hey, pain works to remember things because how many people have put twice the finger under the knife? You learn. But is that learning what we want to do? Did the person learn? He didn't. He learned about the pain, not about the solution. And that's the key factor, because I can teach a dog how to avoid pain, but teaching the dog how to offer alternative behaviors, that's a skill. And most people don't have. Yeah, it's quickly to push the button on the e-collar, turn it up to 120, no matter which device you have. The dog learns how to avoid the pain. He does not learn how to offer troubleshooting. And that's why people get stuck with the systems, because all these people say their tools work, they still use it, which means it didn't work, because otherwise they wouldn't have used it.
I
Interesting.
People
think
with
that's the
trophies, people without trophies, they still use the tools telling us they work, but they don't.
so the really that's the best description of punishment-based training I've ever heard. It really is. It stops it immediately, but there's nothing else learned. There's no learning that happens. Just I need to avoid pain. I
Right.
love I love that. I really do.
It's sad
It's
that
very
we
sad,
have to
but
talk about it. It's sad that we have actually to talk about it.
yeah. So I was having a chat with a student in the UK, and she said she's noticed a huge backpedaling towards using aversives going on there. And at one stage, they seem to be the forerunners in terms of getting rid of aversives and all these mechanisms. Why are we regressing then?
Um, I would refer to a colleague who said it's systems learning. The system itself perpetuated aversive training because it rewards itself. And the more you fight it, the faster it goes prepares forward. There's a critical time where people make choices that is convenient, and they will have to stick with their choices. And this is kind of becomes a bigger and bigger machine that works itself through. I don't know how to get out of that. I'm struggling with the same issue. We see that cultures go down with those systems. Something there is a thing happening and the system is being zeroed and we start all over again. I guess we have to come to that concept that at some point training will become zero and we have to start from scratch again. Maybe next time we're going to do it better. So the answer is there are studies about how that works, but none of those studies have found a solution to get out of it. So I don't know. I hope, and that's what I do. At least I put the foundation for the generation after to say they talked about it, they've done it, because everything that I share publicly or anyways, I have done it. I've worked with it. So people use theories that you can do this. I have done it, and I've shown result with it. It's too complex to explain. I have a simple exercise. Everybody can kind of keep a note and write it down. You have a treat, you tell your dog's name and give your dog a treat. A simple exercise is that. We start associating the dog's name with feeling good. It's not giving the dog treat, it's how the dog feels about it. Name equals feel good. Now that we have paired that name equals feel good, we can associate that feel good with an action. So we can say name and we can toss a treat. And the dog will, on his own free will, run after that treat. We can call that go get it. Simple as that. And now we pair feelings with name. And now next time we say go get it, the dog will have come up that feeling of where is it? And we teach the dog two things. How do you leave a relationship for something else? And then how you come back for the relationship for the same reason. So we teach the dog how to leave a relationship and how to come back to the relationship by using just a freaking treat. Right? And once we have the go get it, and then come when the dog on its own free will come for more, and we pair that, then we can go to the next level and start creating a language tree. where the dog literally can understand languages and words because of the way he feels. So if we say go get it and we are in the kitchen, he knows exactly what to look for. If we're outside and we say go get it, he knows what to look for. It's not in the kitchen, it's somewhere outside. So we also recognize that some words and some meanings and some exercises are also location related. And another example is we drive with our partner to the shopping center and something the partner says, "Oh, I forgot about it." We know what is likely to happen. He didn't forget about his taxes because we're not going to tax consultation. We're going to the shopping center. So the likelihood that we forgot the wallet, forgot the shopping list, forgot the bag, forgot the keys is more likely than anything else, which narrows down the stressor. So teaching those dogs these little skills reduces the stress, makes a dog feel safe, and the dog can learn better. So we see
Predictability.
one little treat and one little exercise can create a secure attachment relationship out of nowhere. Consistency, predictability, and
Absolutely.
emotional regulation.
Sure. So we're not just cookie pushers.
No, we are treat machines.
Sure. Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we must finish up this. Our 20 minutes ended in 45 minutes, so we need to.
Oh,
Um,
She
we
asked the
thank.
questions. I
I
didn't start it.
know, but that's so interesting. It's a new way of looking at everything. It's really really interesting.
completely.
And thank you for your honesty and your yeah your
And your
really
vulnerability,
amazing.
it's rare to see that. And I really appreciate that so much.
It's
You're
it's
helping so many people and their dogs just by being you.
I appreciate that, and thank you for actually touching these kind of subjects because they are taboo
Yeah,
and they hurt, and some
yeah,
people just don't want to talk about it. Like fence sitters, that we I said earlier, they just don't want to sit on that fence. Like, yeah, let's watch it from distance, make sure everything is safe.
it's fantastic. And if anybody wants to get hold of Roman, his address is hovering over there somewhere. Um, you can go to his website. His contact details, everything is there. How to contact him. And yeah, he's working worldwide, so anybody can actually reach out to him. Roman, thank you so much for joining us. We can do this
Thank you.
again at some time. Lee, thank you so much for those
totally we're doing this again.
really,
I
really
I
interesting.
had
appreciate
a
you
whole
guys.
list
I,
of
I, I
questions that I
love.
didn't get to ask.
Go
We'll
ahead.
organize it again. Thank you so
Well,
much, guys.
great things to South Africa, and you guys are in England or South Africa too.
South
South
Africa,
Africa.
Oh,
the
cool,
bottom of
cool.
the whole world.
Are you in England
Wow.
or USA?
I'm in the west coast of the United States.
Yeah.
Let's end it there. Okay, Roman. Thanks a million.
Bye.
Bye
Bye.
bye.